You know, you see it all the time. Scrolling through social media, on messaging apps, pretty much everywhere online, there it is. That generic gray silhouette, the blank profile picture. And it's so easy to just write it off, right? Maybe they're lazy, maybe they're just not online much, but what if there's a whole lot more to it? Let's get into it.
So what is the real story behind that empty space? I mean, is it just someone who couldn't be bothered to upload a photo? Or is there something deeper going on? A real psychological reason for choosing to be a ghost in a world that's constantly screaming at us to be seen?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. It turns out that, for a lot of people, psychology suggests this is no accident. It's actually a very deliberate decision, a conscious choice that tells us a ton about how they think about their identity, their privacy, and how they interact with the world online.
Okay, so the first big idea we need to unpack here is all about one thing: control. This isn't really about hiding from the world. It's about taking charge of how you show up in it. It's a calculated move to manage your own digital self. See, people who go with no profile picture often have this much stronger than average desire to control their own story. They'd much rather decide when and how people see them instead of just letting one single static photo define who they are in every single situation.
And this brings up a really cool psychological concept called contextual identity. The basic idea is that your identity isn't just one fixed thing. It's fluid, it changes. I mean, think about it. The person you are at work is probably different from the person you are with your best friends, right? And there's no way a single photo can ever capture all of that.
And right here, you can see the two ideas clashing. A static profile picture, it's like a permanent name tag, a fixed label that tells the same story over and over. But a contextual identity? That allows a person to be flexible, to present themselves in a way that actually fits the social setting they're in at that moment. So, and this is the really crucial point, this whole behavior isn't about avoiding people. It's about filtering who gets access to you. These are people who are generally pretty comfortable without a clear-cut label. They push back against that pressure to use a fancy photo to show off their status, and they choose, very selectively, who gets to see the real.
All right, so this brings us to our next point. It's not just about identity. It also means you're pretty much playing a whole different game on social media. They're just not engaging by the same rules that most of us are.
And a huge part of this is that they seem to have a much lower need for what psychologists call external validation. You know, they just don't need that constant stream of likes, comments, and impressions on a photo to feel good about themselves or to feel like they belong in that space.
This chart really spells it out for us. You can see that while a lot of those perfectly curated profiles are often driven by a really high need for that social pat on the back, the blank profile is usually linked to a much lower need for it. Their sense of self-worth just isn't tied up in their online performance.
And think about it. Without a picture, there's way less pressure to be on all the time, to constantly perform for an audience. This frees them up from what's called self-monitoring, that feeling that you always have to manage how you look and sound. Instead, they can just focus on what's actually being said, on the substance of the conversation, not on appearances.
So their whole approach to jumping into a conversation is often way more strategic. They tend to hang back and observe first. They watch the interactions, they try to get a feel for the group's dynamics, and only then do they decide to engage, and they do it selectively. It's the opposite of just broadcasting yourself to the world from the get-go.
Okay, now we're going to talk about a theme that is, let's be honest, more relevant today than ever before: privacy. For a whole lot of people, choosing to go without a profile picture is a very, very conscious decision about their safety and their digital footprint in the long run.
And these concerns, they are absolutely real. We're talking about the explosion of facial recognition tech, the way our personal data gets scraped and sold, and the simple, kind of scary fact that what you put online can literally be there forever. These folks are playing the long game. They're prioritizing those long-term consequences over the short-term buzz of being visible. All right, so let's tie all these threads together. It's really time to shift how we look at this, to move away from our quick, easy assumptions and toward a much deeper understanding of what's actually going on here.
This right here, this puts the whole thing in perfect contrast. On one side, you have the common assumption. That person must be antisocial, maybe they're insecure, they've got something to hide. But on the other side, you have the psychological reality, which is often the complete opposite. They are deliberate, they're private, and they are very much in control.
So the next time you see that gray silhouette, maybe pause for a second, because chances are it's not an oversight. It's a thoughtful, strategic move. It's someone quietly managing their visibility, their identity, and their own sense of control in a digital world that demands constant, unending exposure from every single one of us.
And that really leaves us with one final question to chew on.
In a culture that is constantly pushing us to label ourselves, to define who we are with a single picture and a bio, what is the real power, and maybe even the real freedom, that comes from choosing to remain simply undefined?